Hi everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're just gonna have some fun. We're just gonna make something quick, easy, and inspired by an item from one of my favorite personal guilty pleasure shops. Today, we are gonna be making a notebook holder, and this is actually inspired by an item from Stony Clover Lane. Now, let me first show you the item that inspired this notebook holder. This is from Stony Clover Lane. It is gorgeous. It is this beautiful kind of a suede feel. I don't even remember. Is this leather? Is this vinyl? I can't even remember. This is a textured vegan leather. It's very, very nice. You can see it has a magnetic snap closure just like that. You open it up, it comes with a notebook already, it has lines on it, and then you can actually see on the back, the notebook is actually snapped in place. So you can take out this notebook, and then if you had the snap tools, you could replace the notebook. I don't know if they sell replacements for this or not, but it's a very, very beautiful tool, right? And one thing I actually kind of liked about this, I have to study everything with a magnifying glass. But if you look on the very back here, first, beautiful stamping, right? Stony Clover Lane looks amazing. But if you look on the very bottom, you see that? They did a little bit of stitching over, which is something we do in the channel. It's something small, but it's something I noticed, and I thought that was cool. Now, if you've shopped at Stony Clover, like I have many times, you will know that they are not the cheapest items. This is why I call them a guilty pleasure, especially for somebody who makes bags and items for a living. This is actually $58. I do want to tell you they do have like a sale once a year. So when they have a sale is pretty much when I buy the items. But it is $58 for this. Their products, in my opinion, are worth it. However, this is something we can definitely make ourselves, and I thought this would be a fun project for the channel. So I decided to use that notebook holder as inspiration, which is pretty much just a couple of rounded corner rectangles and a snap tab, and decided to make our own, and I will have the template for this size available in the shop. We're gonna go over all the sizes and everything in just a moment. I just wanna give you a quick overview. First, it's just an exterior piece of vinyl with a wallet tab. So we've made these a lot on the channel. We sell these wallet tabs in the shop. This is a fun little item. I'm actually going to be showing you how to rivet it on today. So this is a vinyl raw edge project where we will be using rivets. You don't have to use rivets, but we will be using rivets and a snap. You can see on this one, this is a plastic cam snap. In today's tutorial, we will be using a metal magnetic snap. And then I'm also gonna go over some edge coating as well. I know we don't do a whole lot of edge coating on the channel, but it does give a really nice finish. So when we open this up, bam, you supply your own notebook. So I'm a big fan of these blank notebooks. This is how I take all my notes. This is how we do our designs, our sketches, our ideas. So you supply your own notebook, open it up, and there's one fun thing here that I thought was really cool. First, we have two pockets. We have a pocket on both sides to hold the notebook in place. So this right here, this is what I'm using as a pen holder. This is actually one of those tabs from Heartwood and Hyde, and it's just a little bit bigger, but it's like a single fold over tab. I'm gonna show you that. We're gonna do that in today's tutorial as well, but these are perfect for this project as a pen holder, which means if you designed one, maybe with your logo like I'm doing my logo, that's where I'm placing my tag. But if you designed one with like an inspiring statement on it, you know, to go with your inspiring journal, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of fun ideas to have there. So this is one version I made. I made another version here. The thing I want you guys to remember is that you are going to be your own designer here. I will provide you with the templates that I used for these size notebooks. Let me just pull out the notebook so I can tell you exactly what it is. These are these Strathmore mixed media. The notebooks I'm using are 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, okay? If you have a different size notebook, I'm gonna kind of give you some advice on how to adjust the pattern for your size notebook. You do not have to print out the pattern pieces. You can do it all with your ruler and just like some sort of rounded object like a glass, anything in your house to kind of round these corners out. I can also provide you guys with a little rounding template if that helps. I will be using Decovil Heavy today. You don't have to. Like I said, there's just a lot. The one piece of advice I have though is that you do want to have something that can have raw edges. So you can see for this one, I'm using vinyl. I want to show you another one. This is one I just got done with and my husband loves it. This is actually wax canvas, and you can see again on this one, I have a thicker notebook in here, but once again, I'm using that tab as my pen holder. And then I just used a simple strap here, which I do have the pattern piece for that also available for you. And then again, I just riveted on the back. This one has a magnetic snap. Open it up. This notebook is a bit thicker, so it is a much tighter fit. That's something you are gonna wanna think about when you're making these. the thickness and the size of your notebook. However, it does still work. So you can see these are my two notebooks. One is quite a bit thicker than the other, but they both still work really, really well. So in today's tutorial, we will be using vinyl and Decovil Heavy for this. This is, again, raw edge. We're also going to be using some edge coating. We're going to use our rivet press today. Rivet press is optional. I am using magnetic rivet snaps, though, which, again, that means that this right here, this is the back of my magnetic snap. When I open this up, you see? So if you have a rivet press, I highly suggest you use these rivet snaps today instead of the magnetic snaps that have the prongs on the back. You can also use cam snaps. Like I said, that's what I used on this one right here. I think that's a great alternative. Use what you have, work with what you got. You don't have to go spend a lot of money to do this. I know a lot of you guys are gonna ask about like a cotton woven version. I just wanna show you, this is another one I got from Stony Clover Lane. This is one of theirs. And you can see they did binding on the edge of this. So I don't know about the binding so much because we do have a hard time with binding. I like binding on the inside of bags where we don't see it. But when we have the binding on the outside like this, you do have to be pretty precise. So I just wanted you to know that I am working on another version where we can use quilt cotton and maybe not the binding. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down below. I will have timestamps for today's tutorial. I'm going to try to give you guys quite a few different options and go over quite a few different techniques. Just remember that everything today is more of a suggestion rather than a rule, okay? If this is a project you really want to work on, but your notebook is a different size, I'm going to try to help you guys figure out how to adjust this for your size notebook. And I don't want you to feel like, oh, I don't have a rivet press, I can't make it. Oh, I don't have, if you don't have things, that's okay. So I want you to kind of get creative with me today, okay? I'm gonna show you my way, but I'm gonna try to give you some tips along the way as well. All right, guys, let's get started. Okay, so here are our material options for today. First, exterior vinyl. I'm gonna use this for the exterior piece, which for me is 16 inches by 9.5 inches, as well as the pocket. So I do suggest you get a roll of that. And then for the lining, I'm also gonna be using some vinyl. You don't have to use vinyl. Remember, we're gonna have pockets and we're gonna have the exterior and then we're gonna have the lining. If you're a little worried about your machine with doing that, you can use heat transfer vinyl. Now this is what you use with a Cricut or a Silhouette. It has this backing here that when it's hot, it gets gluey and it sticks to things. So what you could actually do, especially if you wanted to do this and the Decovil Heavy, cut your exterior piece with the instructions that I'll show you in just a moment, and then cut your pocket pieces from your exterior. Cut your lining piece with the heat transfer vinyl and cut your Decovil Heavy with the Decovil Heavy cut, okay? And that way, the Decovil Heavy's not in the seams. Then you're gonna just have 2 layers of your vinyl and then 1 layer of your heat transfer vinyl, which is very, very thin. So you can smush the Decovil Light in between the heat transfer vinyl and the exterior vinyl if you'd like to keep your seams thinner. And I think that would look so cool because, you know, heat transfer vinyl, that's how you get those sparkles. We don't have vinyl that is this glittery. So lots of options here today. I'm not gonna be using the heat transfer vinyl. You can heat it onto the back of vinyl very easily with an iron, just don't use steam, okay? I will be using 2 pieces of vinyl and I will be using the Decovil Heavy. All right, here's a bunch of the other bits and bobs I'll be using today. Clips, always, lots of clips. We're gonna need to be holding things in place today. To also help us, I have a little bit, just a tiny bit of this thicker tape. You don't need thicker tape, I just have it, but this is gonna help us kind of set our strap before we rivet it on or stitch it on. Then also more sticky stuff, this 505 basting spray. This is gonna help a lot because we do wanna hold everything together, but we're not gonna be basting anything. Since all the stitches are gonna be seen in the end, there's no basting. So we kinda have to get it right on the top stitch as our only stitch. The thread I'm using today for the top needle is this Tex 45 weight thread. For the bobbin, I'm using this Gutermann thread, and the needles I'm using are Schmetz Microtex 8012. If you're using really thick material, you're probably gonna wanna use a thicker needle and maybe thicker thread on your bobbin, but you have to know your machine. For me personally, on my machine, it does not like this Tex 45 weight in the bobbin, so I'm just gonna stick with the Gutermann. Next, I have rivets. Rivets are gonna be how I attach the strap to the back of my panel. There are a lot of different ways to do this. I will give you some more suggestions. However, I just really like the quickness, the easiness of the rivets, and I like how it looks. And then I'm also gonna be using these magnetic snaps. So you can see this is a magnetic snap, but they don't have those little prongs on the back. Instead, we're gonna have these beautiful rivets. Since we're gonna be seeing the back of this, I like the rivets. So I would suggest that. So for this project, I would not suggest the magnetic snaps that have the prongs on the back because it is a little bit of extra bulk. So if you're not going to be using these, I would suggest the plastic cam snaps. Those are another great option. Here are all of the dies I'll be using to go with this. These are my rivet dies right here. These are my magnetic snap rivet dies. Here's my rivet press. Marking tools, a chalk marking tool, a vinyl marking tool, anything that you can erase, okay? Again, most of the stuff we're doing today is going to be seen in the end. A lighter for burning off any little tails of threads. And then my scissors, I have these little Tula Pink snips as well as these Kai scissors. The other item I wanted to share with you, which is totally optional, is my edge coat. Now this is from Giardini. And for this, I like this little set of assorted colors. I do believe they have an expiration date. I'm positive I'm beyond the expiration date, but that's okay. So you're gonna need the base coat. So this is a tube of base coat. The tool I use is this little Tandy leather tool here. I think that's what it is. And then I also have some, this is 400 grit sandpaper. I'll show you how to use all this, totally optional. Raw edges on vinyl are totally fine to leave as is, but if you want that really professional look, you can add the edge coating, and we're gonna go through how to do that. So now let's go through the pattern pieces. First, we have pattern piece A. Pattern piece A is going to be your exterior and your lining. So remember, on the exterior, the right side here is the front. When we fold it, this is how it's gonna look. This is the front. You can see I didn't cut my vinyl quite right, but this is for me, so I'm fine with it. And then you're gonna have the same cut for your lining. Now, the way I calculated this was, I took the notebook I wanted to use and I opened it up and I measured how wide it is, which is 12.5 inches wide. And then I wanted to add about 3 inches to that to accommodate the curve of this, and also so that way if I used a little bit thicker one that was about the same size, it would still fit. So that's how I came up with 16 inches wide. I measured how wide this is, and then I added 3 to 3.5, maybe 4 inches if you have a pretty thick binder, and then I added that to the width, okay? And then for the height, I just added 1 inch. This is 8.5 inches tall, so I just added 1 inch to that. Again, we don't have any seam allowances today. The only kind of seam allowance we have is the top stitch, which is 1/8 of an inch. So adding 1 inch to the height was fine. So you can see I made a rectangle like that, and then I just rounded the corners. Again, this is not something you actually have to print off a pattern piece for. However, if you'd like to, I do have them on my website. Next up is pattern piece B. This is totally optional. This is the Decovil Heavy. Now, I like my notebook holder to have a bit of a firmness to it. I like it to be pretty solid. So this Decovil Heavy is gonna do great. If you don't wanna add a lot of stiff stuff to it, I would suggest Decovil Light. I would not suggest Peltex for this project. I would say go with Decovil Heavy, Decovil Light, or no interfacing at all. I'll show you on this version here. This is my first version. This doesn't have any interfacing whatsoever. You can see this one even has a totally different notebook in it. No interfacing whatsoever, very loosey, and it's still wonderful. It's you know, the notebook you put in it is going to give the cover structure, so you don't really need to add interfacing if you don't want to. Okay, next up is pattern piece C. You're gonna cut 2 of these mirrored. So you're gonna cut one like this, and you're gonna cut one like this. See, just like that, because they're gonna go on 2 separate spots, right? 2 separate sides of our lining. I don't do anything on the back of this. You can. On one of the ones I made, I did actually cut out these same pattern pieces using super glittery heat transfer vinyl, and I applied that to the back of these pockets. However, you can't see it at all. Like even when you're inserting your notebook, you still can't see it. So if you just really want to make sure that this raw back doesn't like scrape against anything, then go ahead and add some sort of lining to this, like heat transfer vinyl. Otherwise, you can just leave it. You can leave it raw. All right, the next piece is the strap tab. I will provide you with a pattern piece for this. You're gonna have to have 2 cuts that are just bigger than it. I'm gonna show you kind of an easy way to sew this together without having to like line these up perfectly. So if you're using this, I would just suggest make sure you have rectangular cuts that are bigger than the piece, but you don't have to trace them and cut them just yet. We'll get to that in just a moment. If you don't want to use that, you can instead use a pre-made strap tab, which is always my preference because they're super cute. We love making these and putting them in the shop, so we usually have a pretty good selection. And this is what, you can add edge coat to this if you'd like. If you want to edge coat your strap, do it before you make the rest of the notebook holder, okay? You don't want to edge coat this after it's already attached to the notebook. So if you're making a bunch of these especially, have a day where you just work on the straps, you edge coat them all, let them dry really well, and then work on your notebook and adding them on. I'm not going to edge coat this because you can see for this, it just really doesn't need it. It looks really nice on the edge already. It just depends on your vinyl. And then this little sucker here, I'm very excited about. This is a single fold sew in tag, right? I get these from Heartwood and Hide. I typically have a smaller version of this, right, where it doesn't have the long fold, and I just stitch it onto my designs. This, however, is a perfect size for a pen loop. So my one suggestion is you want to make sure the height of this is 2.5 inches, okay? So the fold is right here, and it's 2.5 inches high. So if you have a logo, you can stitch this on and your logo shows like that, or you can work with Jade and have something inspiring printed on this that helps you be creative. I mean, if this is like a journal for a teenager or an artist or anybody in your life, this would be a really sweet little way to add an inspiring message. I do suggest having these made out of cork, vinyl, leather, something like that. Nothing woven here, okay? You need something that can withstand a lot and doesn't have thread tangled in there. But I think this is really fun. I highly suggest you get those. Okay, so first thing, let's make the strap tab if you've decided to use this pattern piece for that. So think about if you have a directional print, remember this is gonna go across like this. So think about your direction. Mine, I don't really have anything on here I'm trying to keep, so I can just flip it on the back and I'm gonna trace it on my exterior piece on the back. So it could be any kind of marking tool, just give it a quick trace on here. Once you have that traced, grab your scissors and just take your time here and cut it nice and even. Remember, this is going to be left as is. There's no seams here to help hide any kind of wonky edges. So just go slow. It doesn't have to be perfect. Especially if you're using edge coat, you can get away with a lot here. So if you have little jagged edges, that's okay. We have many opportunities to clean those up. All right, so once you have that done, then grab your lining piece. And what we're gonna do is we're just going to kind of smack them wrong sides together like that. If you'd like, you can glue it, tape it. I like to use my basting spray. The reason I like this stuff is because I can sew over it and it does not gum up my needle. So I'm just going to spray the back of my exterior piece. And this spray is not gonna hold it forever, but it will hold it for long enough. Okay, so now I'm just gonna push it wrong sides together with my lining piece, just like that. So now I'm gonna take this unit to the sewing machine and I'm gonna top stitch around the exterior here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that way I don't have to worry about lining anything up with the lining or anything like that. It is just smack dab in the middle of my lining. I'm gonna top stitch it on, only looking at the exterior, and then I can trim it down and I have a perfect little tab. Okay, so I have it stitched on. Now before I trim it, you can see I left my tails long. I did back stitch once at the beginning and once at the end, so just one stitch, not a whole bunch of back stitching, just one stitch. I did that for both the beginning and the end, but I also left the tails because I'm gonna pull those to the back. Since this section here, the top rectangle corner is going to be riveted in place, you're really not gonna see the back of it at all. So this is a good place to start and stop your stitching because it's less noticeable. So once I have all 4 threads pulled to the back, I'm just going to triple knot it by dividing them into 2 and 2 and do a quick triple knot. It's a little wild with all these threads. And then now you can just trim this down. So you have very, very small tails. And then we can just burn those tails very gently. Boop. Ooh. Well, see, that wasn't gently. That was a bonfire, wasn't it? Boop. There we go. But again, remember, this won't be seen. This is going to be riveted down. So I'm not too concerned about that. So now I'm going to flip it over. And I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm just going to trace right along the edge. So I'm not cutting my exterior material at all. I'm just lining up my scissor right along the edge of it and cutting the vinyl. And if you wanted to take a scrap piece of Decovil Light, Decovil Heavy, and add it right down the center here, you definitely could do that. Like I said, this is the type of project where you're the designer and you're going to make those calls based on what you feel is the right decision. I'll give you guidelines on what I do, but I love it when you guys change it up yourself. There we go. So that's our little strap, super cute. So now I'm going to continue on using my pre-made embroidered strap, but I did want to show you how to build that strap. So if you can use either one of these for the rest of the pattern. Okay, next up, we're going to add our Decovil Heavy to the exterior material. Honestly, you could add it to the lining if you'd like. You can add it to whichever side you want, but I'm going to add it to the exterior. So adding this interfacing to vinyl is pretty easy. We're just going to go to the back side of the vinyl and we're going to center our heavier interfacing on it. There we go. And then I'm just going to grab a scrap piece of material and I have a nice hot iron with steam. And then all we have to do is just over our scrap cotton woven material, we're just gonna press this on. You want a pretty good press. I mean, you want it to be stuck to your exterior pretty well. However, if it's not stuck crazy well, that's okay, because we're not turning this out in any way. We don't really have to worry about it coming undone while we're working on the notebook holder. So go ahead and fuse this on to the entire exterior piece. All right, there we go. Now we have that fused on. If you wanted to add your tag to the exterior, now's a good time to do that. So what I would do is just fold it in half, and remember this top right side, that is your front. And like I said, I have this white strip here, whoopsie, but I would add a tag right here, or you can add it on the back, add it wherever you want, but now's a good time to add the tag. Like I said, my tag is gonna be added as the pen loop. So I'm done with this. So now I'm gonna flip this over to look at the wrong side. I'm looking at my Decovil Heavy, and I'm gonna grab my lining vinyl. And then on the back of either one of these panels, I'm gonna use my basting spray and just add some glue here. There we go. And then I'm just gonna glue these wrong sides together. There we go. Just push it down. And if it's not perfectly lined up around the edges and stuff, don't worry, it just needs to be mostly good. We're gonna have to clean it up anyways later. So there is that. If you'd like, go ahead and add a couple clips to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. I might actually use these types of clips here so they don't leave little marks on my vinyl. There we go. Okay, so depending on your material, that glue might work really well or not much at all. It's okay that we just need to hold it together for a little bit. So now we're going to install the tab. So on the pattern piece, I have placement marked for how I like to install my tab. It's pretty much on the exterior, right side up, on the left side over here, which is the back, and it's gonna be 2 inches in and centered. So it's just gonna go right there. That's the placement for it. So you can use this and kind of cut out this little area here to help you place it, or you can just measure. So I'm just gonna measure. So remember, this is 9.5 inches tall. So half of that is 4 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm gonna go 2 inches in from there. And then I just mark a little line with my vinyl marker. Very easy. The nice thing about vinyl markers or leather markers on vinyl is that you can wipe it off. You can get like a damp rag or just wipe it off. It's pretty easy. And now my strap tab is just gonna line up with that. And I'm gonna try to make sure it's straight. You know, you don't, if you want to attach it like that, go for it. But I want mine to be pretty straight. So I'm gonna try to straighten out my panel on my grid here. And then that way this will help me keep this straight here. And this is where a small piece of heavier duty double-sided tape comes in handy. Just cut off a very small piece. I'm gonna attach it to the back of my tab. This is probably like a 1-inch piece because I'm gonna rivet this down anyways, so it's okay. And then I'm just gonna attach this like that. There we go. So now I'm going to rivet it in place. What you can definitely do if you'd like is you can take this to the sewing machine and sew it down. Just remember, you're sewing it down to the exterior and the lining. Riveting, same thing. We're riveting it through the exterior and the lining. We want as many layers as possible because this is the one piece that's going to be used the most on this project. It's going to be pulled open and shut a lot. So you want to make sure this is supported. So I will use 2 rivets here, or you can sew a little box with an X through it using your sewing machine. Again though, just make sure you're going to be going through the exterior, the Decovil, and the lining. So there are so many cool tools out there to help you space out rivets. I'm just going to space them about 1/4 inch. Well, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go 1/4 inch in from my top stitching here and centered. And then I'll do 1/2 inch from there. So I'm just spacing out them about 1/2 inch apart. Just eyeball it. There we go. Okay, so that's where I'm going to put my rivets. Okay, so I'm going to pull out 2 sets from my rivets real quick because I like to snap them on as soon as I make the hole, just to make sure nothing gets out of place. So carefully, holding all of my layers together, I'm just going to grab my rivet press that has the hole punch on it, and I'm going to punch right where I marked. And then I'm going to quickly install my rivets to make sure nothing moves. There we go. Isn't that cute? It looks nice. And by doing 2 rivets, it makes sure that this doesn't start swirling around. You know, if you just have 1 rivet, even if you press it really well, over time this could start going up and down, and that can wear down your vinyl and eventually rip it. So 2 rivets just make sure it stays straight. So I'm gonna grab my other rivet press, and I have my rivet dies. If you're interested in learning more about rivet presses and the dies and everything, I have a whole video going over it with everything I use, everything I love. I do recommend it though. And now I'm just gonna press these down. Okay, so now the strap's connected. Let's just take a little peek. Let's be careful with this. We don't moving it around too much. This is what it's gonna look like. Isn't that fun? I love these. Okay, next step is we're going to attach the snap portion. So I'm using a magnetic rivet snap. Again, you can use a cam snap if you like. If you want to get creative, you could use Velcro. There's other options if you wanted to use a button. I mean, again, get very creative with what you feel comfortable doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is punch a hole out over here for the placement of my first snap. If you're using these magnetic snaps, you might want to kind of eyeball this and make sure you don't punch a hole too close to the edge, and then this would end up hanging off the edge. So you might want to take it and just kind of look. These snap tabs are designed with this nice big space, so I do suggest you just center your rivet in this open space right here. So personally, I just look at it and eyeball where the center is, and then I'm going to punch out a hole. All right, so I've only punched the hole out for now. I'm going to go grab my clips again, make sure this doesn't come apart. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this ever so gently and kind of get an idea of how it's going to look in the end. So you can do that. If you want, you can actually, again, carefully clip it, fold it in half so you've got it all lined up. And then you can fold this over and help get an idea of where you want to place this. Now, I want there to be room in case I have a thicker notebook. The further in you place it, the tighter this is going to be. And if you have a thick notebook, it's not going to close. So you want to give it some space. If you have an embroidered tab like I do, you probably have a top of the design. I suggest just letting that top of the design line up with the right edge of your notebook. And the biggest thing is just make sure it's centered. That's all. If you want to get a ruler out and make sure this is exactly, centered on your exterior, you can do that. You guys know how I am though. I like to eyeball it, and I like my stuff a little wonky. That's just me. Okay, so once I know where I want this to go, actually, you want to see, you can also, if you really want to get precise, let's do this real quick, just to help you out. And me too, to help me out too. Grab the notebook you're going to use and just slide it in here and get it all lined up. There you go. I know it's hard to get it exactly lined up when you have that notebook in there, but just do your best. Remember, perfection's not the key here. It's gonna look good, even if it's not perfect. All right, does that look okay? So then, oh yeah, that looks nice. And this gets you excited too, because you see it coming together. You're almost done. Okay, so once you have it lined up where you want it, we still have that hole right there. I'm just gonna take my marking tool and I'm gonna mark right in that hole. And I'm marking on my exterior vinyl. So I lift this up, I have this little dot here. That's how I know where to put the other end of the snap. Now I'm going to use my hole punch and punch out the hole for that part of the snap. So this is again where I said you're your own designer today. If you're an exact type of person and you want to make sure this is exactly centered between the top and the bottom, then grab a ruler and center it. If you're more whimsical and you just kind of want to feel the placement for it, then do that too. Whatever makes you happy here. This is your project today. Okay, so I like to put the male end of the snap on the tab because it's thinner than the female end. So here's my male end, and the magnetic part, the male part, needs to be on the back of the flap. So the lining part of the flap, and then the rivet part goes on the top of the flap where that embroidery design is, or your exterior material is. And then for the female section, the female part of the snap goes on the exterior material, okay? So like that. And the cap goes on the back on the lining material side, okay? Very easy. I love these magnetic snaps. So I'm gonna grab the dies. Magnetic snaps have 3 dies, 2 different bottom dies, one that looks like the male snap, one that looks like the female, and then a top die that's for the rivet. So it's nice because then you only have to change out the bottom dies, which don't have screws on them. So it's really easy to do this quickly. So I'm going to start with the bottom die that looks like the female snap, which means then we're going to be setting the male snap. So I'm just going to insert this in, rivet side up, and give it a press down. There we go. And now I'm just going to switch out that bottom die, grab the die that looks like the male end, and then flip this over and set my female side. All right, there we go. So now you can see how it's all coming together. It's so cute. Isn't that adorable? I love this so much. So we're about done, guys. Now we just gotta add the pockets and sew it and we're done. Okay, not just the pockets, we also have to add our pen loop. So let's start with the pockets first. So lay out your pockets so that they line up. They're right side up on the right side of the lining. And just make sure they're lining up with your curved edges if you're using curved edges here. And this is when we're gonna grab the clips and we're gonna clip it all together. You could also use these hair clips if you'd like, whatever you're comfortable with. If you're using like a really shiny vinyl, like this type of vinyl or something, you might not wanna use these little clips because they can cause little creases. They do come out over time, but if you don't got the time, then don't use the clips. And when I'm doing this, I'm not clipping my strap tab. When we sew, this strap is out of the way. We're not sewing it onto anything. We're keeping it out of the way. If your pockets don't line up perfectly with the edges and everything, don't worry, we're gonna clean it up. We just want it to mostly all line up for the most part. So now we have the pockets on, and I'm also gonna clip down my little pen holder here. Now this part, depending on how thick of material you're using, can be a little tricky. So I do suggest you use quite a few clips. I like to put mine, let's see where I put mine. I put mine about an inch down, maybe an inch and a half down from the top edge. And I use lots of clips here because this sucker does like to move at the machine because this is gonna be on the bottom. We're actually not gonna really see this when we're stitching. So we need to pay attention to it without actually seeing it. We'll talk about that. Okay, so everything is clipped in place. Everything is where I need it to be. We're gonna flip this over and we're gonna take it to the machine and we're gonna top stitch around the entire rectangle, not this. This is out of the way. We're not top stitching over that. We're gonna top stitch around the entire rectangle at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you wanna go a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch, that's fine. You're gonna go really slow, okay? And here's my suggestion. I like to start at the bottom. I back stitch once, and then I continue on. So I start, one stitch forward, one stitch back, and then continue on. I'm paying a lot of attention here to the underside. Every time I come across one of these edges, I back stitch once over it. So here, 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 and here, because these will be pulled when you're inserting and taking out your notebooks. So I add a little bit more reinforcement, so one back stitch right over these spots, and then I also back stitch at the beginning and the end of my tab here. Just think about any place that's gonna be tugged on. You probably want more than one piece of thread there. You want a couple pieces of thread there, okay? So the trick is just going slow. If you have sticky vinyl, for example, this vinyl ended up being way stickier than I anticipated. If you have sticky vinyl, you're gonna wanna put this on the bottom of your presser foot, unless you have a Teflon presser foot, which is made for sticky material. If you just have a metal presser foot like me, you're gonna take a piece of this is just Scotch magic tape, and you're gonna put it right on the bottom of your presser foot, okay? And you're going to cut a little slit here for your needle. I'll do it. We'll put it on the machine. I'll show you how to do this, okay? So let's go put this tape on and then top stitch our adorable notebook holder. All right, so what do you think? It's funny because if you're using a pre-made strap, this is the only sewing you do the entire project. It's just that one go around. You can see I did leave my tails. I did backstitch at the beginning and the end. I hope you caught all the other times I was backstitching. I like to make sure everything looks good here. That looks really, really nice right there. I mean, look how stinking adorable this is. You know how they have like that Star Wars hotel at Disney that's opening up? If I was able to afford a reservation there, I would probably take this with me because this is adorable. So I left my tails long, and I'm going to just pull up on the bobbin threads once again. If you backstitch, you really don't have to do this. I like it. It's just, I don't know, personal preference. So I'm pulling the top stitching to the back, and I can tell you one of these top threads is not coming back, and that's okay. I'm just gonna trim it from the front. If you can't pull the thread back at all, then it's already knotted inside. It's already knotted in between your two pieces of material, so don't even worry about it. So I just have my 3 pieces of thread here. I'm gonna triple knot those and clip them and burn them down. You could also thread them through one of these holes where the thread is so that it goes in between the 2 panels and then knot it in there so you don't see it at all. That's a very, very cool look, but it does take a little bit more time. All right, and I'm gonna very gently boop this, and you can see I melt it and then I push it down. It's not hot, so I melt it and I push it down, and then my notebook will also cover that, so it's not really noticeable. All right, there we go. Isn't that sweet? So now we're just gonna clean up the sides, and I'm gonna show you how we do some edge coating. Okay, so even if you lined up everything as perfectly as possible, it's a good chance you probably still have a little bit of unevenness over here. And if you're going to edge coat, you really want everything to be as even as possible. So I focus on the exterior. I'm mostly concerned that this looks good. So looking at the exterior, I'm just gonna take my scissors and just kind of glide it right along the edge. So I'm not actually cutting through the exterior, I'm just cutting through the lining or the pockets. It's usually the pockets that give you the trouble over here. So I'm just gonna go around. A lot of times they like to kind of pop out over here where they connect in the center. Corners of the pockets will kind of pop out over there. And you want to cut only what you need to cut. You don't want this to become like a DIY bangs situation. You know what I mean? Like if you cut your own bangs and then one side is cut shorter than the other side, so you cut the other side shorter, but then now that, and you end up with nothing. You don't want that to happen over here, so you want to cut as little as possible. So for me, I'm just focused on trimming down the lining or the pockets. Okay, so everything looks good from the exterior. Now let's flip it around. And everything looks good from the lining. All right, now let's edge coat. So first up, we want to add primer, which is this base coat, which is primer. If you've painted wood, if you've painted walls, you know you always want to start with primer because it makes the color look nicer. So this is great primer. The thing about edge coating is it just takes a while. So if you were going to make quite a few of these, I would, first, if you wanted to edge coat your straps, have a day where you just edge coat your straps, let them dry overnight, you're done. Then have a day where you build a bunch of these, and then have another day where you just edge coat them all because they all have to dry. So I'm going to get my base coat, open it up. You can see I use it a lot. And then I have my little tool here, and you just dip it in there like that. And I like to look at it from the exterior. So I look at it from the exterior. Again, you want to flip this out of the way. If you want, you can tape it down so you don't have to worry about it. And then you just go along the side and do a pretty generous amount. If you use this tool, you should be in good hands. You shouldn't have to worry about dripping. Your first round of using the base coat is not going to look great. So what your material is doing, your vinyl right now, is pretty much just sucking it up. So it's just soaking it all in. And you're going to look at it and go, that's not what it's supposed to look like. It's because you got to give it a couple rounds. So you're going to go around all of it and just globbing it on there, making sure it doesn't run down the side. If you see some of it on the side, you can just wipe it off with your hand. And first coat, again, don't worry about perfection. We're just trying to get the material to soak it up. Oh, you know what? I forgot. I actually have an old cutting mat that I like to do this on. Here we go. This is the back side of an old cutting mat. That way, if I make a mess, it's not on my nice cutting mat. So I'm just going to go around and add my first layer of the base coat around all of the edges of my notebook cover. Okay, so I don't know if you can tell, but it's pretty rough looking after you're done with that first coat. Just let that dry. That first coat isn't supposed to be pretty, it's functional. So when I let these dry, I don't like any of the edges to touch anything. So I will find spools of thread. I'm like, this is just a box, it's smaller. I'll find anything so I can lay this out so none of the edge-coated edges are touching anything. Because if they touch something and they dry, you're gonna have a weird little lip and you're gonna have to cut it down, sand it down, it's a whole thing. So after I let this first coat dry, then I'm gonna do at least one more coat. Now, depending on your material, if your material is really like, it's just sucking it all in, you might wanna do three goes of edge coating. The more of this base coat you put on, the better it's gonna look. It's gonna have this really nice, like thick plastic coating around the edge. So this is the most important stuff. 2 or 3 coats of this, make sure it dries really well, and then you can use the color. Okay, so this one right here that I showed you in the beginning of the video, this actually only has 2 coats of the base coat on it. It doesn't have any color on it yet. It looks great, but I can still see like the brown and the orange from the vinyl. So I'm gonna add the color to this one. And remember, this is wax canvas. You can still edge coat wax canvas. So here is some sandpaper. You can just kind of lightly go around, sand it down. You want this to be really smooth. So also between each layer of the base coat, I would sand it. I know it takes more time, but you're gonna be happy you did it. Okay, once you have it nice and sanded, then you're gonna take your colored paint. So for this one, I'm gonna use a dark brown. For the one that we were working on before, I'll probably use black later. And I always shake stuff up. I don't know if you're supposed to, but I always shake things up. So you're gonna grab that, and then just make sure you cleaned off your tool. And you're gonna do it the same way you did the edge coat. You're gonna just put this in the paint, and then lift it up, and go right along the edge. And this should actually be kind of fun because now you're just painting that edge. And you can get really creative with your color here. You can use a totally different color. Just remember, if it leaks down onto the material, it's gonna be noticeable. So if you use color that matches your material and it leaks a little bit, you're not gonna really notice that. So now I'm just gonna go around my edge and just add that really nice, you see, you can definitely see the difference. Here's just the base coat and here's the brown. You see that right there? So I'm just gonna go around and do this one time. All right, so once that is all done, ooh, it's always so hard to do this without touching anything. I'm gonna let that dry. Once again, I don't want any of the edges touching anything. So I'm gonna let that coat dry and then I'll do a second coat. All right, guys, so here is our finished product. I'm gonna go ahead and put a notebook in it. Once again, I'm just using this mixed media notebook. And now I have not finished edge coating this. That will take some time. I have to do a second coat of the base coat, and then I need to do 2 coats of the colored coat. I'm probably gonna use black. If you wanna see what it all looks like in the end, make sure you're following me over on social media, over on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll show you that over there. But you can get a pretty good idea based off of just this. All right, so I have my notebook in there. How cute is that? I just love this. This is so much fun, and I could definitely fit a bigger notebook in here as well. So I hope that you love making these. I hope you play around with the measurements, make it bigger, make it smaller. Let me know what size you make. Let me know what changes you make. Change up your strap tabs. Like I said, these strap tabs are available in Shop OklaRoots, so if you want to add them but you don't have an embroidery machine, we've got you covered. We have lots of different options. And if you just want to make one yourself using your own favorite material, I have that template for you. The pattern and templates and everything is free, and it's over on my website. I'll have a link for it down in the description. I hope you love making these as much as I do. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.